Has anybody ever felt distant from God in prayer? Yeah, I think we all have at some point in time or another. Well, today, God is going to show us how to close that gap and at the same time be used by Him for His purposes. And we're going to do that by looking at two verses, really just only two verses, and they're both from the book of 2 Timothy. Now, 2 Timothy is one of my favorite books of the Bible. It's actually not even a book, it's really a letter, and it's written by Paul. In fact, it's Paul's last letter that he ever writes, and he writes it from prison in Rome, and shortly after he writes this letter, he is executed for his faith, probably by beheading. Now, the letter was written to a guy named Timothy, Paul's protege and friend, and Paul was probably the father figure that Timothy never had. Now, they met when Timothy was young, probably mid-late teens, but now Timothy is a young man, and he's actually leading the church in the city of Ephesus. And when you read the letter of 2 Timothy, you can sense the love that Paul has for Timothy and the genuine care he has for him. And it reads a lot like a goodbye letter, kind of like this passing of the baton to young Timothy, so to speak. And it's filled with a lot of instruction and a lot of encouragement. If you haven't read it, it's only 4 chapters long, so you can read it pretty quickly. So you can knock it out this week, no problem. But in chapter 2, Paul writes this series of basically good and bad choices, some right and wrong scenarios, so that hopefully Timothy will choose the right scenario. For instance, the first issue is true teachers versus false teachers. So, Timothy, be a teacher of truth. The second, the second comparison, the third comparison is actually a life of peace versus a life of quarrel. And so, Timothy, be a guy of peace. Be a man of peace. Don't get into arguments with people about things that are unnecessary. And so that's the first and the third. The second one, the middle scenario, that's the one we're going to be looking at today, and that is honor versus dishonor. And that's where we find our final praying with fire prayer, which is, God, use me. So let's read it. It's in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 20 and 21. And it says this, now in a great house, there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some for honorable use, some for dishonorable. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from what is dishonorable, he will be a vessel for honorable use, set apart as holy, useful to the master of the house, ready for every good work. Now, in our house, dishes, which, by the way, that's what Paul's talking about when he's talking about vessels. That's the euphemism there. Dishes in our house, in the McGown house, are kind of a big deal. And I think it's wonderful. And my wife, Amy, has, whenever we have people coming over our house, she takes great care in picking out whatever dishes we're going to serve on that day. And she takes into account who's coming over, what season it is, what we're celebrating, if anything, what that person's likes are, what that person's needs might be. And so she picks, and so takes all that information, and we either serve on our fine china, or we serve on Christmas china, which, by the way, we have 2 of those, or the Woodlands china, which, by the way, that's my personal favorite, or our Scriptures china. And she decorates to make it because, listen, she wants that person to feel loved, thought about, cared for, and appreciated. And it's really a cool thing. And now, sometimes, when it's just the 2 of us, kids aren't there, and it's just the 2 of us, and we're kind of tired, we might eat on paper plates, right? And now, are paper plates bad? No, but you know why you eat on paper plates, right? So you can just throw it all away. You don't have to clean anything up, okay? But listen, we would never use paper plates when other people are coming over to the house, okay? Yeah, I got an amen at the front. That was fantastic. Yeah. But we don't use them for special occasions. And that's essentially what Paul is telling Timothy here, okay? Now, although he uses a word that could be used for dinnerware, he's not talking about dinnerware. He's talking about how God uses us in other people's lives. Basically, we are used by God for different purposes, some formal, some informal, but the truth is we're all used by God. And so what I want to do, I was like, let's go through this again a little slower. Let's pick out a few things, then we're going to come back and make some application points from it all, okay? So let's look at it again, verses 20 and 21. It starts out with, now in a great house, okay? Now, great house, that is simply a reference to any Christian church anywhere, okay? So now in a great house, in any kind of Christian church, there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay. Now, the word vessel here is used in a variety of ways. It can mean a boat or a ship. It can mean an instrument or a tool or something like dinnerware. That's just an instrument for serving food. Or it can actually be used sometimes to refer to a person, as a person is God's vessel, is God's container to be used for good purposes. And that's the way it's used here. It's a reference to a person. And so in this great house, in this church, there are vessels, there are people of gold and silver, wood and clay, basically fine china, chinet. That's kind of what it's saying. And so it says, let's keep going. Some for honorable use, some for dishonorable. Well, ouch, Paul. Like, that kind of stinks a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit harsh, don't you think? Well, it's actually not intended that way. Because remember, Paul is writing to Timothy, who is a young man at this point. And listen, Timothy looks up to Paul. He is Paul's mentor. And so Timothy wants to be used by God for noble purposes, just like Paul has been used for noble purposes. Listen, and so if Paul knows what it takes to be used by God like that, if Paul knows what it takes to be a person of gold and silver and not necessarily a person of wood and clay, and Paul doesn't tell Timothy about that, that is unloving. That is unkind. And so that's why Paul writes this. So he draws these contrasts so that Timothy will aspire to the higher level and to be used by God for these noble purposes. And that's what Paul is saying to each one of us as well, to aspire to this higher level. And so let's continue. Verse 21, it says, therefore, and remember, anytime in the Bible you see the word therefore, you always got to ask, what is the therefore? Therefore. And so let's find out. Therefore, if anyone, by the way, that includes you and includes me, if anyone cleanses himself from what is dishonorable. Okay, now pause right there. Who is the one who controls what you cleanse yourself from? You. You, if anyone cleanses himself or herself, you are the one who controls whether or not you are a person of gold and silver or wood and clay, okay? You are the only one who can cleanse yourself from what is dishonorable. Now, hold on. I'm not talking about being forgiven here, okay? You don't forgive yourself. Jesus forgives you. He forgives you for everything that you've ever done or thought or said that is wrong. He's the one who forgives you for that. But Paul is talking about, hey, once you've been forgiven, to choose to continue in life, that's your choice. So you can continue in those sinful, bad habits, or you can choose a different path. But you have to choose. Listen, nothing in your life is going to change unless you start to choose differently. Look, Jesus will forgive you the past. He'll even forgive you some things you do in the future. He'll even give you the strength to follow through and make different choices in the future. But at the end of the day, you have to make a choice. It's up to you. You have to choose differently. And once you do, here's what Paul says. It says, he or she will be a vessel for honorable use, set apart as holy, useful to the master of the house, that's to the Lord, ready for every good work. Essentially, at that point in time, you're praying a 3-word prayer. God, use me. God, use me. And anybody who has that attitude, anybody who prays that kind of prayer, God's answer is always the same. Absolutely. Absolutely, I will use you. And God will use you for something honorable or something dishonorable. Fine china, chinette. Really, at that point in time, the choice is yours. Which begs the question, well, like Timothy, how do I become a person of honor? Like, how do I ascend to that higher level and aspire to that higher level? Well, 4 quick things, and then we're going to show you how all this comes together. Here's the first thing, and write it down. First thing I got to do is I got to fight sin daily. I got to fight sin daily. Look, what sinful habit do you need to break free from? Chances are you already know. You don't really need me to get up here and name a whole bunch of stuff. You probably already know what it is. And again, if you're a Christ follower, you've already been forgiven, okay? I'm not talking about forgiveness. I'm talking about a commitment not to repeat that sinful pattern. And so, what do you need to do? What choice do you need to make? Do you need to stop going out after work and just go straight home? Maybe that's your choice. Do you need to block someone? Do you need to just get off social media entirely, at least for a while? Do you need to unsubscribe from some channels? Do you need to change your music? Do you need to put out a swear jar at home and every time you say a wordy dirt, you put money in it? And then you give that money to your kids? I'm telling you, at that point in time, your kids will call you out, right? I mean, they will. But it'll change. Things will change. Listen, do you need to move out? Listen, what do you need to do to start to change? Chances are you already know. Listen, and that is God's Holy Spirit already prompting your heart, like, this is what we need to do to start making some changes, to live like I'm telling you to live. So, make the change. Start doing it. Fight sin daily. Here's the second thing you got to do. I got to stay connected to Jesus Christ. I got to stay connected to Jesus Christ. Look, it's all about having a relationship. And as Christ followers, Jesus died on the cross so that we could have a relationship with God that starts on earth and continues forever in heaven. And how do you maintain a relationship on earth with anybody? You do simple things. You talk, you listen, you spend time together. It's the same thing with God. Look, this is not complicated. And people try to overcomplicate this. It's simple. You talk, you listen, you spend time together. And so you talk to God in prayer every day. You listen to God, what he says through the Bible by reading it every day. And you spend time, you carve that time out where you pray and read the Bible every day. That's what you do. You stay connected to Christ by doing those simple things. And you do that, then you are in a position to be used in an honorable way by God. And that brings us to number 3. Number 3 is I need to put myself in a position to be used honorably. I need to put myself in a position to be used honorably. Look, at some point in time, you got to get in the game. I'm talking about getting into the spiritual game, getting into the spiritual fight that we are all in, like it or not. Look, you can't just sit in your house or your apartment and you can just expect God to just use you to change the world or to change your part of the world. It's not going to happen. You have to put yourself in a position to be used by God. You fight sin, you stay connected, and you put yourself in a position. Well, how do I do that? Well, let me give you 2 quick ways. The first way is to serve. Man, you got to serve. You got to volunteer. So listen, in this great house, where are you serving? Where are you volunteering? Because when you serve, when you get in the battle, man, I'll tell you, God uses you for a greater purpose. And the job might be big, it might be small, it might be front and center, it might be behind the scenes, doesn't matter. God will use you. But you got to serve to make that kind of thing happen. You got to put yourself in a position to be used by God, and serving is a great way to do that. Now listen, if you're already volunteering at Parkway, man, way to go, good job. Keep it up. If you're not yet, and you don't have to even be a member here to volunteer, you can, then start. And the way you start that process is you take that connection card, and if you're online, you use the online connection card, and you, on the back, on the far right, it says, send me information about volunteering at Parkway. And then you designate whether you want to do kids or teenagers or, adults. And someone will reach out to you this week, either by email or by text. So, make sure your info's on the front and that we can read it. Someone will reach out to you this week and get that process started. Let you start serving wherever you want to, or help you find a place if you have no idea where to serve. We'll get that. We'll help you with that. That's the first thing. Here's the second thing. There's a second thing you need to do. And that is, you need to invite people to a place where they can hear about Jesus. Invite them to church so that they can come and hear about Jesus, which the timing of this is perfect because next Sunday, we're kicking off our big fall series. It's called I'm So Done. Because don't we all get to the point in life where we're like, I am just so done. I was there yesterday with college football because my team was getting spanked. It was terrible. I was I'm just so done with this. But we get to a place where we're so done with bigger things, right? I'm just so done with just being overwhelmed all the time. I'm just so done with disappointment. I'm so done with parenting or finances or feeling alone all the time. Everybody gets to that point. We all do. But here's the thing. If you're a Christ follower, you have Jesus to turn to. But people who are out in our community, where do they go? I'll tell you where they go. They either start down a path of making destructive choices, or they turn to someone outside of their marriage. But there's a better way. God has another way, and we need to invite them so they can hear. And the truth is, we need to hear too. And that's what this whole series is going to be about. It's going to be so great. It kicks off next Sunday. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to, right now, to make a commitment that you're going to take that, there's a QR code on the inside of your worship guide. You're going to scan that QR code with your phone. You're going to download our digital invite card. And all you do is just hold the image, and you can save it to your phone and your photos. And then here's what I want you to do today, or actually this week. Do it this week. Go through your contacts. Go through your entire contact list. And anyone that you feel like the Holy Spirit prompts you, maybe I should invite them, then send them a personal text with one of that digital invite card and invite them to come on Sunday. I want everybody to do that. I'm going to do that this week. I want you to do that too. Because when we do, we are putting ourselves in a position to be used honorably by God. Okay, last one. Here it is, number 4. Become an active vessel of this great house. Become an active vessel of this great house. When I was growing up as a kid, we almost never used our fine china. Literally never. I don't know why, but my mom, we just almost never used the fine china. Listen, don't be the kind of person who's never used by God. Don't be someone in this great house who is never used. And there's 2 really easy ways to keep that from happening. The first is take our membership class. Officially join the church. In fact, we have our membership class about every month. In fact, here's a picture of our membership class that we just had just a couple of weeks ago. Man, it was so much fun. We had such a great time. Great people joined our church. Listen, we hold this class once a month. It's after the 3rd service. We'll feed you lunch for free. We'll take care of your kids for free. And then we're going to take about an hour and 15 minutes, and we're going to tell you all about Parkway. We're going to let you kind of peek behind the curtain a little bit. And what we do is we're going to accelerate Your knowledge of how the church operates, how it runs, how it benefits you, how it benefits your kids, how it benefits your teenagers, how you can come be a part of it. So we're going to accelerate all of that. It'll save you years of just attending and just kind of figuring out as you go. And it gives you an opportunity to say, you know what? God, use me for your purposes in this great house. That's what membership does. So sign up for the class. It's not too late. You can sign up today. You do it on your connection card, or you can go do it online. We have a membership class next Sunday. We also have one the next month and the next month. So get in on one of those classes. Okay, that's the first thing you do. Here's the second thing that you can do is you got to join a small group. Join a small group. Listen, Sunday morning, this is only half of what happens at this great house. The other half happens during the week in small groups. Listen, we have over 1,000 adults already signed up to be in a small group. We have over 600 kids and teenagers signed up to be a part of a small group. And so if you aren't signed up, man, do that. You can do that on our app. You can do that on the lobby. You can do that on your connection card. We want to get you signed up for a small group, okay? Be a part of it or get your kids signed up for one, okay? All right, so those are the 4 things. So let me kind of show you how all of this comes together, okay? So I've got an illustration up here with me today. Okay, cool. And so let me actually put some water in this first. Let's just say that this picture represents your life, okay? So this represents you when you receive Christ in your life. Because when you ask Jesus to come into your life, he cleanses you of all your sin. Like he forgives you of everything. So all that anger and all that bitterness and all those bad habits and all those things that you've done, like he washes you clean. He forgives you for all of it. And so he views you as clean and pure. In fact, Jesus calls himself living water. And so you're clean. But here's the thing. It doesn't always stay that way, does it? No, it doesn't. You see, there are times in our lives when we let other things come in, like this red wine vinegar. And so out of vinegar, maybe we let some bitterness or some anger, some vinegar into our lives, and it starts to cloud our lives. Or maybe for us, maybe it's like this rock star energy drink. Maybe because we think, man, I'm a rock star, baby. Like, it's all about me. And I'm the man. I'm the woman. Like, everybody ought to be like me. In fact, the whole world was like me, the world would be a way better place. I like me. And so it's all about me because, man, I'm a rock star. I'm it. Or maybe it's like this one. This is called liquid death. Why people would drink this, I have no idea. But liquid death, that's unforgiveness. Maybe you've got some unforgiveness in your life because you haven't forgiven someone from what they've said or what they've done to you. And listen, when you live with unforgiveness, that doesn't hurt the other person. That hurts you. Because that bitterness starts to poison your heart, your life. They're fine. You're the one that's hurt by that. Or maybe for you, it's like this liquid gold. For you, it's like money, 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 right? It's all about the money because it's all about what you can accumulate or what you can have or the flashy car or the flashy shoes or the apparel you've got. Maybe it's just all about your image. And now this only comes in a spray, so we'll just do that right there. So it's got some liquid gold. Or maybe for you, it's like this energy drink. It's like this protein shake. For you, it's all you have become consumed with your image, with your fitness, with your health, with how you look. And all of these things, when we start putting all these things in our lives, start making them a priority, listen, it clouds our lives. And it becomes harder for other people to see Jesus in us. And so when we try to invite people to say, hey, come and hear about Jesus because he's changed my life and he can change yours. And they look at our lives and they go, that doesn't look that changed. And the way to fix that is not to take a teaspoon and just start digging out a little bit at a time. It'd take forever and really not make much change. Now, I'm not saying, again, we still have to make some choices to make different choices. We still have to make some commitments to do that. But the real solution is this, is we've got to make that commitment to spend time alone with Jesus. Because the more time we spend alone with Christ, the more we allow him to be a part of our lives, the more we read the Bible, the more we pray, the more we do the things we've talked about today. We, fight sin, we stay connected. God, use me for your purposes in this life. So the more I spend time with Jesus, and the more I let him do things in my life, the more he's a part of my life, and the more he floods out, his presence floods these things out of my life. And the more I do that, and the longer I do that, the purer and the clearer my life becomes. That's how it works. It's just not that complicated. And then people can start to see Jesus in you way clearer. And that leads us to our pro-prayer tip. Here it is, I want you to write it down. The pro-prayer tip is fighting sin helps me approach God in prayer. Fighting sin helps me approach God in prayer because look, there are times in our lives that when we struggle with sin, we just keep falling victim to that same habit. We feel so ashamed and guilt-ridden that we don't want to go to God in prayer. What we want to do is the very same thing Adam and Eve did in the garden. We want to hide from God. That's what happens. And that's exactly what sin does. It drives this wedge between us and God. But if we choose to fight sin, if we choose to spend time alone with Jesus anyway, no matter how we feel, if we'll do the things that we've talked about today, then it makes it so much easier to approach God in prayer because we know we're not perfect. But listen, when we make efforts, that fights guilt and shame. Not perfection, effort. And that's what Paul is telling Timothy. So what's the prayer pro tip? Fight sin, make changes, and keep going to Jesus. And when you do, it makes praying with fire so much easier. Now, one last thought. We're finished. All of this means is that you have to have Jesus to come into your life to forgive you in the first place. I mean, all this is predicated on Jesus coming into your life to forgive you of all of your sin. You can't forgive you. Jesus forgives you. It starts there. So if you can't ever remember a time when you've asked Jesus Christ to come into your life to forgive you for everything you've ever done, that's why he died on a cross, so that his death could purchase forgiveness for you. If you can't remember a time when you've asked Jesus to come into your life and committed to follow him, and you're ready to do that today, there's a prayer that you can pray to become a Christ follower. It's in your message notes, or it's going to come up on your screen in a moment. But I want you to pray that prayer right now while I pray for all of us. So everybody, bow your head, close your eyes. Jesus, thank you that you don't actually make it very complicated. You make it pretty straightforward and pretty simple. And so help us not to overcomplicate it. It all starts by spending that time alone with you, praying, Jesus, use me. So Jesus, use us for your purposes in this world. And help us to do some things, to make some choices, to stop some sinful behaviors. Help us to put ourselves in a position where you can use us. Use us to invite people to church. And I ask that you would let all of our invitations this week fall on hearts and on ears of people who would be open and receptive to coming. So use us, Lord Jesus. Use us for your purposes in this world. And it's in your name that I pray. Amen.